Welcome to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. This season, we are featuring experts who are on the field with you, helping you navigate the current world of internal communications.
How to gather the data you need, the information you need to take it then to the leadership. And Cindy has a great phrase, which I'll steal right now. You never want to go into leadership if you're trying to change how you communicate and say, I think we ought to try this. You go in and you say, the data is showing us that this needs to happen.
It's about really understanding our audiences and just knowing, being confident that I know what makes them tick and I know how to deliver it.
Within the past couple of years, it's safe to say that we've learned a lot in terms of what makes a company run smoothly in 2022. And while a lot of what we covered this season may sound familiar to you, we've actually discovered yet another new angle to consider. Our guests for this week's episode are no stranger to Internal Comms Pro. Steve and Cindy Crescenzo have been podcast guests for several seasons. Returning listeners will definitely remember their chemistry as they share their work with Crescenzo Communications, a consulting firm for communicators. Today, Steve and Cindy share their latest discoveries and how you might need to say goodbye to corporate communications as you know it. All right, well, Steve and Cindy, welcome back. These are our favorite guests to have on the podcast. We're so happy that you're back here, season 7 of Internal Comms Pro. If you don't mind, for some of our listeners, especially new listeners that maybe haven't met you yet, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience today?
Sure. Wow, season 7, you outlasted Downton Abbey. You got a longer run than Downton Abbey, for God's sake. That's wonderful. And well-deserved.
Well-deserved.
I'm Steve Crescenzo.
I am Cindy Crescenzo. I am technically president of Crescenzo Communications, but we really are a two-person, sometimes well-oiled machine, fighting the battles of internal communications every single day.
Well, thank you so much for coming back. You're a fan favorite. And for those of you, who may not know your backstory, everyone, Steve and Cindy are married. So they're partners in business and in life. Give us a little bit of your journey and your backstory again for the listeners who don't know about your power duo team. Tell us, how did you get into the world of internal communications?
Sure, I will start since I am the CEO of Crescenzo Communications.
Right.
I was a journalism major in college. Always loved to write, always loved to create content. Came out of journalism school and realized there's no money to be made in journalism, and you had to go to small towns to practice your craft. And I didn't want to leave Chicago, so I ended up going to a newsletter publishing company that specialized in internal communications. So I started writing, it was trade publications basically. Started writing for them. I became the editorial director there, became the vice president of new product development. I started launching newsletters. I started planning conferences in the field, and then eventually they moved me into speaking and went on the road for them, and it was a big success. I turned out to be a pretty good speaker. And then after a while, I was doing it for them for a while, and I realized, I'm doing all the work here, and they're making about 80% of the money. So why don't I try to do this on my own, and I can make 100% of the money? And it worked. I shouldn't say it worked. It worked from a money generating. I was very good at speaking and did well. I was not good at running a business.
No,
so
that's a whole other ball of wax.
And enter Cindy.
Yeah. So, Steve came to me at the time, and I was working for nonprofit arts in Chicago, which I'm incredibly passionate about. We're based here in Chicago. And I was the marketing director of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, which was unbelievably cool. But, for those of us who've worked for nonprofits, it's the most rewarding job ever, especially when you're passionate about whatever focus it is. But the reality of it is that you don't get paid too much, right? So it got to a point where I was hoping to one day to be able to afford to buy a ticket rather than getting them for free all the time because I work for them. And Steve just kind of came along with an idea. Hey, Sin, why don't we try to fuse things together? I really need help with marketing. I need someone to build a website. I need someone to invoice people. I need to organize all the different things that go along with running a business. So I hopped in. It was super scary because you got to go from regular paycheck to Steve. which is the definition of
Of stupid.
craziness.
Of stupid. That's what
Uh,
it is.
no, but it was great. Have not looked back ever since. We got things organized underway, and then it occurred to me as I was hearing Steve interact with all of his clients and going to all of his presentations when people would bring him in for training, that a lot of communicators out there didn't have a lot of confidence when it came to measurement, when it came to figuring out what works and what doesn't inside of an organization.
Research.
Research. Some strategic planning elements were really missing because they had no research. So a huge light bulb went off, and I thought, this is how I can continue my career in this area, and that's how it all came to be.
Well, I love how complementary your skill sets are, and you're just a breath of fresh air, I think, to the community and to people. I think your style of kind of, I think the last time we talked, it was like, man, this is like straight talk, what we need to hear, kind of a tough love conversation. And I just think having that truth, and but yet giving tips that we can actually do, gave our listeners so much confidence. And we like having, again, the brightest, best thinkers on this show. And so that's why I'm like, all right, let's have you back. We've been through so much together and so many things on the horizon. It's a new day, it's a new canvas. And so I can't wait to dive into, all right, here we are now, right? We are post pandemic, but it cracked open, I think, this world of the value of internal communications, and kind of cracked open, hey, yeah, traditional corporate content doesn't work anymore. So talk to me about this. Talk to me about the time period of history we are in, and why isn't the traditional corporate content working any longer?
You're so right, Sarah, that COVID did change employee communications forever, without a doubt. If we are willing to step up to the challenge, they was a period there where they absolutely needed us more than they ever did before. We were the ones that were. I mean, we were holding companies together in some points. We're holding cultures together. I'm hearing murmurs and whispers that executives are starting to backslide back into the old corporate way of doing things, and I really hope that's not true, because they did. COVID forced a shift into more timely news. The approval process has shrunk into more relevant news, into more transparent news, into more human communications. It forced executives and organizations to go into that mode. And our job, I think, as communicators, is to make sure they stay there.
Absolutely. And, to that point, the only way to do that is the communicators that are going to stay in the spotlight. They've done a great job measuring and doing research all along the way to really show, wow, we all had to communicate differently. We all had to embrace scary new ways of communicating. Here's the effects of it. Here's what worked and here's what didn't. Here's what we need to keep, because look at the value. And it has been amazing for us to do communication audits throughout the whole COVID process, because when you talk to employees about life before COVID and after in terms of communications, so many of them are saying, finally, I feel like the walls are down, right? It's not this corporate fluff. I get stuff that's relevant to me. I get stuff that's authentic and real. It's just such a cool thing to hear from organizations. But I think the only way to keep it on the table and keep going in that direction is to really help executives see the value of it and the effects through research and measurement.
And Sarah, I just want to throw in one more thing: is that you said why corporate communications doesn't work anymore, traditional. I don't think it ever worked, to be perfectly
Right.
honest. I think we just kind of thought it worked. We assumed it worked. We just did it because we did it because everybody had to have a employee newsletter. I don't know if it ever worked. We've done workshops on 5 of 7 continents and burrowed into a lot of different companies, every size. And there's 3 categories. There's bad corporate communications, which is the awful visuals, the grip and grins, the terrible headlines, the long thumb sucking CEO letter that nobody reads, the jargon, the acronyms, all that crap. Then there's good corporate communications where the content is better visuals, better writing, but it's still very stiff, very formal, very corporate, very safe. And then the third group is, take the corporate out and replace it with creative and do really creative consumer quality communications just like the stuff they see in their real world,
Hmm.
and do it inside the company, inside the organization. Our mission in life is to push everybody into that third group, have them do really solid, creative communications that moves the needle, that changes behavior, and that's our goal. That's our North Star.
But the three buckets, right? You could do a self audit real quickly. Which one are we, right? Are and so I love that you give us kind of that the tactical thing to self audit. By the way, then you want to take the next step and have Steve and Cindy come and do an audit so that you can be set up for success and have the dynamic duo on your team to do this. So dive in a little bit more because I love all these tactical things. If I now recognize, oh my gosh, I'm in the bad kids group, right? What does it take for me? What is the first step?
I think it's a three-step process, much of which Cindy will speak to, and that is number one, prove that the old way, the corporate way, the bad way isn't working. It's not. You're spinning your wheels. You're wasting your money. It's falling on deaf ears. All you're doing is checking boxes and churning out crap. So you got to prove that that's not working. Two, show them that you know a different way with case studies, examples. Here's what other companies are doing. And then three, get them to let them get them to let you try it once, try one thing differently, and slowly make your way down there. But the first part is the critical part. That's where Cindy comes in. You can't do it without proving that the old way doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Listening has never been more important than it is right now. Every organization looks so crazy different these days, right? Some people are embracing this hybrid thing, some people are making it mandatory to come on back, some people never left. It is, and we don't know what the future is going to look like. If there's one giant lesson from COVID, it's that we don't know. We simply don't know. So the only way to kind of make sure along the way we're evolving and adapting the best way we possibly can is to always constantly have a way to talk to people. And the COVID time frame has really opened people up to the thought of participating in communication research and measurement. It used to be kind of a struggle because people just kind of didn't get it, right? What are we talking about? And I don't know. That's your job to figure out what to get to me. Now people really appreciate the ability to participate, to have a voice, and from being on a web camera, which before I would have to basically bribe people to turn on a camera if I had to do them virtually. It's a no-brainer now. That's what people are used to. So we've got to use it to our advantage and assemble a couple groups across the organization to really say we need to understand how to move forward going from here.
We just did a workshop that Cindy thought of, and I hate to give her credit for anything because I'm the CEO.
You can continue. Well, that's what good CEOs do, Steve.
All right,
Recognition.
we called it the communication playbook. It was all about listening techniques, research techniques, focus groups, executive interviews, surveys, even other ways of doing that. How to gather the data you need, the information you need to take it then to the leadership. And Cindy has a great phrase, which I'll steal right now. You never want to go into leadership if you're trying to change how you communicate and say, I think we ought to try this. You go in and you say, the data is showing us that this needs to happen. And you know what? Executives don't argue with data. They don't care about your opinion because you're a lowly communicator. They care about data. And if the data is showing that engagement is dropping, you're not moving the needle. If you have data that shows the workforce is not getting the information they need in the format they need it in to help the organization, they pay attention and they will try new things, especially nowadays.
I love it. Well, this season, our theme is on the field. And so we want to share with people, you don't have to do this stuff by yourself, right? So there are experts who are really good, who've already figured all this out, who have the perfect playbook that people can engage. And again, we're going to put links to all this stuff of how people can sign up for these things. I want to talk about the mastermind here at the end. If everyone's kind of getting jazzed up, like, all right, like, go find the experts that know how to do this and that have already done it around the world and engage. And now I'm ready. I've got this blank canvas. I'm like, I'm ready to be creative. And what if, because of my weariness, right? I am tired and I don't have any inspiration. Where do I get creativity? How can someone start developing the creative communications plan?
Well, I think you hire us. No, I'm kidding. Of course, no one likes somebody selling stuff all the time.
Yeah, you need to just zip it.
You know what it is? I think most people come into this field with creative juices. I really do. I think they come in, they're creative. That's why we're in communications, right? We're either writers or we're communicators. We communicate naturally. We're not accountants. We're not, bedwetters. We're not, engineers. Um, and then over time, like you said, sir, people get weary and they get the creativity sucked out of them. And I think the service that we do offer through our trainings, through our consulting, through our workshops is it's almost like Johnny Appleseed, how we went around the country sowing apple seeds. We love to show there's so many creative companies out there in communications that are doing so many cool things. Attend some webinars, attend some virtual workshops, see the cool things that people are doing. We do a thing called 6 word stories, which we've had many of our clients do, where you ask employees to create 6 word stories about the culture, about the company, about the work they do, their colleagues. Well, we've done this with at least 50 companies, and they turn into fantastic communication campaigns that are just captures the pride and the passion that people have.
Well, the fact it feeds itself. So that's the beautiful part. It's why I get so geeked up about data, because it's not just about generating reports, right? It's about really understanding our audiences and just knowing, being confident that I know what makes them tick and I know how to deliver it. And whether it's a funny video or maybe it's as simple as, look, we are stopping all staff emails that are one size fits all, and we are tailoring messages according to what we know you need from about this specific topic. Even that can qualify as creative in the corporate world because we're so used to doing one size fits all communications. So being that unique and that targeted stands out and cuts through the clutter. And when you see that, employees start to get relevant information that is meaningful to them, we start influencing behavior and a culture in a positive way.
We'll continue our conversation with Steve and Cindy after a brief message from our sponsor, Circle. Your workforce is full of incredible people. People who come from different backgrounds, who are from different races, speak different languages. As internal communicators, you get the chance to make sure employees' unique stories and experiences are shared in an inclusive way. Circle Broadcast creates a personalized, cross-channel experience for each of your diverse, dispersed workforce. Head on over to circle.com/ICP. That's CERKL.com/ICP to learn more about how you can broadcast your employees' stories in an impactful way. Welcome back. We're now diving even further into Steve and Cindy's idea for creative comms, especially when it comes to getting pushback on an idea. Let's jump back in. And I think you model this, right? So when I think why people are so endeared to watch you both work together, I think it was Mr. Rogers who said, you love watching people love what they do. That makes you engage. So if you are listening to this and you are tired and you're weary, I would also say, like, what gives you energy? And if you are the corporate communicator or whatever you call yourself these days, go where the energy is. If you love podcasting, then start there, right? Because that's what's going to give you, like, what gives me energy. If writing long form doesn't, then I would not start there. And so I think because, Steve, you talk about, hey, we're the lowly communicators, right? We need to be reminded you're not. You have a value, you have a very special gift. Use it, like whatever that is, like funnel that stuff into now like this cracked open door that you've made for yourself to like paint, right? So I'm curious, when you work with folks all over the world, is this something that you see as a hallmark of like what makes the difference between the successful ones and the not so successful ones?
I think the successful ones aren't afraid to take risks.
That's right.
You know what? Everyone's so afraid to fail. Everyone's so afraid to try something new. If it doesn't work, I'm going to have egg on my face, and people are going to think I'm incompetent. You know what? You don't fail if you try something new and it fails. You fail by not trying something new.
Or you fail by doing something that doesn't work over and over again.
Yeah. I think the people who are willing to take some chances, like a 6 word story campaign or a humorous video, we show a video from the American Medical Association, the CEO. Well, remember the cue card scene where he's at the door? They had their CEO film a video that mimicked that scene. And that took a lot of nerve to have the CEO, who's a doctor, a very serious dude, They coached him into doing that, and if he would have failed, I mean that's a risk. The employees went berserk over it. So that's a great example. They watched a movie, Love Actually. They thought, you know what, that'd be really cool to have the CEO do his annual end of the year message during COVID, where he's thanking all employees for all the hard work. Instead of it being a long thumb sucking email that nobody will read, they did that, and it went viral. They put it external as well.
Yep.
I mean, stuff like that where you've got to be willing to take a chance once in a while.
Absolutely. And in the external world, it's a necessity. Like you will not have a job in any marketing advertising position if you don't have a testing model set up where we're going to test messages to group A versus group B and see what happens. We're going to test graphics, group A, group B, formats, that's part of your job. And if you don't do that, you will not have a job.
Let me jump in real quick here because that's so good. Do you suggest them marketing that very thing so that they could open a space for them to screw up?
100%. And the fact that you have to communicate that to your leadership and explain why. This is what we're trying to do. We don't want to do things just to do them, just because it sounds like fun and I got this idea. Tie it to a business goal. What business goal are you trying to influence? How does it tie in? When you start to think about that, and then the next question you ask yourself is, what does success mean? What behaviors are we trying to influence according to this topic? What do we want people to do? What do we want people to do after they watch this video of this doctor doing this cue card thing? What did we want them to do? When you can document it and be specific, it gives you a business case to be more creative. And that's what's missing. People, I think, are afraid to try things because they're not thinking through the strategy behind it. They just want to launch, which is the fun part. But we do have to tie it to business goals so that we don't lose our credibility with leaders and that we start to establish trust in saying there's a business sense behind it. We're going to try this hook. We have a way of testing it, a way of measuring it. If it doesn't work, on to the next. We are going to grow from it. This is how we're going to learn from it.
If I have decided, right, and we hear this a lot from our listeners, they like, I've tried everything. I'm going to go to the tough love people here. Is it okay to give these people permission? Like, then go find an organization, right, that embraces this. And I would imagine if someone is, looking for a culture where they can, be creative, I would imagine these would be some questions they would want to ask if they are in transition, if they are interviewing. Talk to me about that. I almost feel like we need to give people permission to make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all in a position to interview organizations for ourselves instead of the other way around. But it's true, and it's our opportunity to do that. And go in, have conversations about what you can contribute to that organization, but what are they going to give back to you? Are they going to give you that freedom of growing your career or shaping it to what you want to be? I think that is crucial, and it's something that we definitely have to bring to whatever interviews we're in, if we're in them.
Yeah, and I don't think that was the case 10 years ago.
Absolutely
I think
not.
we were kind of at the mercy of, we needed a job and
Just want to get in.
and then I'll do the hard labor, lifting the heavy rocks. But nowadays you have a lot more say over things. Companies are waking up to the fact that they need to stand out. And how do you do that? With communications. Internally, externally, we do internal communications, but guess what? Internal is external and external is internal now. Like that CEO, AMA CEO, that was an internal campaign.
Yeah.
It was so good, they put it on YouTube and LinkedIn, and it took off even more. If you do employee communications right, you are branding, you're recruiting, you're retaining, you're doing PR, you're doing social media marketing, you're doing all that. Well, one of the things I'm teaching in my workshops these days is all these companies that are using social media like Facebook and Instagram to do employee communications, where they're featuring their own people, because every organization has great stories. They have them at the individual level, people doing great things, the team level, doing cool things, and the organization-wide level, what the organization's doing. Our job is to tell those stories in a creative fashion, and that will engage our internal audience. That's also a way to establish our brand with our external audience as well. And our brand is our people. It's not a logo. It's not a color scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Our brand is our people.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can help tell those stories internally and externally, go to those kind of companies that appreciate that, and they are growing by leaps and bounds. Everybody's getting it now. Everybody's getting on that bandwagon now.
So
now
refreshing.
Now they're casting about looking for people that can make it happen.
Well, there you have it. If you learned anything over the past couple years, it's that we can't be afraid to take strategic risk. Understanding that the world of corporate communications has already shifted shows the need for new creative ideas. Like Cindy said, if you're trying something new and at the very least you learn from it, then your ideas are anything but failures.
A huge thank you to Steve and Cindy for joining us on the podcast today. If you would like to continue the conversation with them, you can find all of their info and how to get in contact with them in our show notes. Internal Comms Pro, the podcast, is produced by the Internal Comms Pro Collective and proudly supported by the Circle Broadcast Suite, an entire suite built for internal communicators. Learn more at circle.com. And don't forget to visit www.internalcommspro.com/show notes for our free resource guides. Thank you for listening.